Well, what's up, my lovely learning designers? Are you ready for part 2 of the 6 things I wish I knew before I started working with subject matter experts? Let's do this. Okay, so part 1, if you missed it, I'll put it in the description below so that you can check it out. Hopefully you found it useful. And as we're ramping up and I'm giving you more tips, hopefully that's spurring some ideas and you are implementing them. Maybe let me know in the comments which one you found the most useful for your context, which one you were like, this one's actually really awesome. I never thought about doing it that way. If you implement, I want to know. That'll be fun as well. All right, so now we're going from 4 to 6. I have some seriously awesome goodies for you to talk about today. Okay, so first one is number 4. Make them the star. All right, so listen, have you heard that saying? And I think it's something that they say for wives and husbands. And the saying goes, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? And I think a lot of times what happens is that we get, we're like, oh, we're introducing something new and cool to the organization, and SMEs, you better come along because you're not as forward thinking as we are. We're going to turn this, digital and e-learning and all this stuff. And that's fine, but that doesn't really get you support. So one of the things you want to do is make others shine. And the way to do that is to give people recognition, thank them for giving you feedback. It's like, I've had so many projects where people just kind of disappeared on me, or they had to go and take care of other things that were more important to their job, right? And so you're like, when somebody is able to give you time, their most precious resource. And by the way, I love the fact that you're here and watching this with me. I hope you find this valuable. One of the things that you want to do is really acknowledge that time, really acknowledge their contribution, whether it is through feedback, whether they're showing up on Zoom calls with you or taking meetings with you. That is so important. Also, giving credit for their ideas and letting them know how instrumental they were in the development of that project. Thank you cards, sending thank you cards, giving thank you cards. People they'll want to work with you again because you made them feel so great, right? And so that's what's really important. Make them feel like the star, because that will spread. That really good feeling will permeate. They'll be more apt to promote the project. All those things kind of stack. It's like a butterfly effect, right? So make that person feel like a star, and that's important. Now, the other thing I think is kind of important to note here is that when you're talking to people who are maybe not in our world, like L&D or interactive storytelling, scenario development, what happens is we come in with a whole bunch of jargon. And I think a lot of times we feel like we have to explain the entire process of what we do to this person who, I gotta say, they got their own domain. They don't need to know about what we do to contribute. In some ways, and I mentioned this in the other video, is the more laser focused you are about extracting their particular knowledge, the better for them, because they'll want to work with you instead of being burdened with, oh, I have to learn how to do, interactive storytelling because I happen to be the subject matter expert, but I don't really want to learn it. It's not my domain. And that's fine, right? Like, so what I suggest is that you keep your interactions very focused and also jargon free. So keep it at a high level until people start asking questions. I think we over deliver on information without somebody actually asking for more information. So we just overburden them instead of just saying, hey, here's what I actually expect of you. And that's where this really comes in. Nobody wants to feel like an idiot, right? Nobody wants to feel like they're not going to have the ability to contribute in the right way. And if you bring somebody in who is totally new to this world, they're going to feel like a fish out of water. And so one of the things you need to do is to make them feel super comfortable about their role and how they can contribute. And that clarity is key. So letting them know what to expect from you, letting them know what is expected of them and how they can contribute, and then making them feel like confident about the fact that they're the right person for that job because they're bringing in that deep smarts, that expertise that you need in order to create a really contextual scenario or an interactive story or any kind of other e-learning project or even learning development project. So make them feel like they know what they're doing and feel supported and feel like they really are the rock star in that equation, without saying you're the only person we need, because that's what we get into in my next tip, which is tip number 5, always have a backup. This has probably happened to you. You send something to somebody and they disappear. They've gone on vacation you didn't know, or they got taken off on another project, or they're such an expert that they need to be, somewhere else. They've gone on a trip. You don't know. So I usually, like the last time I worked on a project, I think I had about 8 to 10 people kind of that I could tap into. I know that sounds like amazing luxury, and I know not everybody has that. But if you can have 3 to 5 people on every project to kind of have these backups, there's a reason for this. One, it's not just because people disappear. That happens. That's not the issue. What happens is, and you might know this, is that some people are better subject matter experts than others. Some people are more forthcoming, some people are less busy, some people really click with you. And so what happens is you can talk to 3 or 5 people. I usually say 3 to 5 is like pretty optimal. And then what happens is, after you've talked to them and sourced them for different pieces, which kind of spreads the burden as well, what also happens is that you figure out who are the people who are like really on board. And then you can really just go deep on those people, because they'll be able to help you. And so that's what I suggest is kind of, what's my range? Who are the people that are kind of can help me? And then start kind of feeling your way around, because it'll make the project it'll make it more pleasant, to be honest, for not only the experts, but for you, because then you'll end up in some ways working with people who actually enjoy working with, and who enjoy working with you, and who are on board with the project. And everybody else, they can just be there for the sign off if they want, but that's totally cool. So now, this is the other thing I learned the hard way. Be prepared for the curse of knowledge. So I just want to put it out there. It's not your subject matter expert's fault. So what is the curse of knowledge? If you don't know, the curse of knowledge is basically where you have become so good at something and it's become such an ingrained habit that if I tell you how you do it, you will probably not be able to tell me the steps. And I've had conversations with a subject matter expert where I said, so, this was a person who was a mediator. And I said, okay, so you're in a situation and these people are asking for like a ransom. How do you, what's the first thing you say? And they're like, well, you just do it. And I'm like, okay, how can I turn that into learning, right? I'm like, what? You just do it. Okay, so do you feel like when you just feel it? And I'm like, oh man, this is gonna be rough. So what I want you to consider, and it's in the moment I was frustrated, and after the phone call I was frustrated, and then I was like, curse of knowledge. It's not this person's fault. It's that they were a mediator for like 25 years, and they were in the zone, and it's almost like some things felt very intuitive for them, and so they weren't able to really unpack those things. And that's very important for you to consider, because I think that a lot of our frustrations come, and I've heard conversations and I've had questions posed to me where people are like, this SME is so difficult and they can't really give me good scenario options. They don't know how people make mistakes, or they come up with these canned responses. And I'm like, because people don't think about mistakes when they've already got the flow down. It's not their fault. It's actually what they're supposed to do. Imagine if every single day you questioned everything you did. Nobody does that, because we get nothing done. So as much as possible, somebody who's an expert starts making these things automatic. And so I just wanted to show you this little range. It's called kind of the knowledge spectrum, right? And let's say, and you've probably seen this before, this is an old model, basically where you've got, on one side, you've got unconscious incompetence. So unconscious incompetence is where you don't know what you don't know. Like if you were just starting to, like you didn't even know that bikes existed, and all of a sudden somebody gives you a bike and you're like, I don't even know what to do with this thing, right? Is this better than walking? Hell yeah. All right. And then we've got unconscious competence over here on the other end of the spectrum. The unconscious competence is where you're riding a bike and you can like talk to other people and do all this stuff, and you don't even you're not even paying attention to how you're balancing yourself and steering. It becomes an extension of your body, right? So that's unconscious competence. And I got to tell you, tons of subject matter experts, the minute you reach that expert level, they're at the unconscious competence. They're doing things unconsciously. So for them to be a really good source for you is difficult. And usually the people who are the best sources for you when they're at the expert stage is people who have been practicing and mentoring for years. It's a part of their repertoire to actually remember those things because they know it's part of the lessons that they need to impart on their mentees, right? So people who have been practicing being a novice for a long time or working with novices, those people are great subject matter experts. But I got to tell you, they're hard to find because most subject matter experts are experts in their field and they're doing the work every day. They're not teaching anymore. And so how do we fix that? Well, you may have noticed on my very beautiful diagram here is there's a little bit of a sweet spot right here. And this is where somebody is consciously competent. So that's somebody who's reached the point that they can do all the actions, but they know why they're doing those actions and they're still observing and thinking and refining those actions. Now, for me, those are people that I call recent practitioners. And those are people who have, let's say, started that job or become that expert, but it's fairly recent, in the past 6 months to a year. Basically, if they can remember what it was like to struggle, if they can remember why they made certain mistakes and the mistakes that they made, those people, they're awesome when you're working on interactive stories and scenarios because they can remember what it was like to struggle. And the struggle is what makes a great story. And the struggle is also what makes great scenarios because your options are actually really legit, right? Because somebody's like, that's what I actually believed was true. And that's what I thought was the right course of action. Yes, that's real. It's not because I'm lazy or ignorant. It's because I truly didn't know, or this is what I believed. And so what is awesome is that when you're sourcing your practitioners, and that's why it's actually good to have, 3 to 5 people at a different range as backup, because you can have the person who's the super expert or the expert. What they can do is they can kind of review everything to make sure that it is accurate and that it is true and that it is valid and that it corresponds to everything that that is the intention for that lesson. So they'll verify if those situations are legit, but it is the practitioner who will be able to provide you with all the little nuances that make that experience feel super authentic and close to the real world as possible. Because basically what we want whenever we create experiences, especially anything story-based or anything scenario-based, you want somebody who's not familiar with that situation to look at it and be like, oh, that could be me. They totally know me. They've talked to me somehow, or they found my diary and they know all the things I'm thinking, because that person who you interviewed or who collaborated with you was so close to that point where your target audience is that they can still remember it and they'll be able to tell you the authentic situations that happened. They're not so far removed that they don't really remember what it was like to be a novice and to struggle with certain beliefs or certain patterns or certain habits. So, knowledge spectrum, it's important. All right, so I hope you found those useful and helpful for you. Like I said, if you have any tips or suggestions or anything that came up to you, because I know all of you are working on, collaborative projects as well. So whatever tips you have, post them in the comments. I'd love to hear if you found this useful, which one resonated with you the most, or which one you actually are going to try if you haven't. Make sure you watch part 1 because it's a lot of full of good stuff as well. And make sure you subscribe so you can see the next video that I'm going to be posting and you get notified right away. In the meantime, have a fabulous rest of the day, friends. Bye.